It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Hour two, the big panel. Looking forward to that. But, today I had this really interesting conversation about the PRO Act. It's one of those things where, a union guy actually came to me and said, things are okay. Things are okay. We don't need something that extreme because he was doing all right. The fact of the matter is he was doing great. The contract that he worked under has been in place since 1964. Gets the world's best health care, has good retirement security. Things are good. Things are good for him. And he's got, I don't know why we need this. I don't know why we need to be pushing, because, things seem okay. And, it was one of those conversations where you start talking about what other people are experiencing. Because it's easy that once you're in your space, and this happened to me, I'll be completely honest to you. This happened to me. I can tell you the light bulb moment. It was December 31st, 2016, when, boom, I woke up to the reality that healthcare was not something every employee got, and in the way that I got it. When you thought of employer-sponsored healthcare, because, I've been very fortunate. I've always had a good union job with good union healthcare. And look, we negotiate for it and we demand nothing less than what we have. And I tell the story all the time. I had my hip replaced about a year and a half ago. And it cost me $120 out of pocket. That is phenomenal. And again, I go back to that moment at the end of 2016 when I was self-employed. For a couple of years, I decided I'm going to do the self-employed thing. I'm going to be my own boss. So I went out looking for health insurance. And oh, wow. Health insurance, crazy. And, I had heard people saying, their health insurance got expensive. Wow. And then I really got into collecting, people's stories. Now, I go back to 2010. I knew people were struggling. You heard the stories. You heard people talking about their high deductibles, their high premiums. You heard all that. For me, it wasn't really real. They were stories. People were telling and sharing their stories, and I listened, and it wasn't real until you said, here, this is your reality. And I said, I'm not taking that. And I had options, and but I had this conversation with this guy who doesn't understand what anyone else is going through and how difficult it is to form a union in today's world. And I understand. Here's a guy who walked into the job, didn't have to fight for it. And I shared with him some of the stories of the old timers that I knew who literally got their heads split open when the police or the company thugs came and caused trouble. Back in the 60s, these guys said, the trucking industry was they're poverty wage jobs, going back into the 30s and the 40s. My grandparents' generation made that a middle class job, and in the middle 60s, they made it a great job as it moved forward. And this guy is benefiting from that. And but for him, his perspective, everybody's got it like that. And I used to think that way too. That, well, of course, everyone has health care. And of course, everyone gets overtime after 8 hours. Of course, if you're forced to come in and work extra hours on your day off, of course you're going to get, time and a half. Of course, if you work a seventh day, you're going to get double time. Of course, everybody gets this, don't they? And the answer is no. And when people start, and look, this is why I started this program back in 2005, to talk about this. The fact that as a working class, we've been just screwed. because the pendulum has swung to the side of corporate power. The moneyed interests have funded politicians and think tanks and all of these groups to attack all of that legacy of that our grandparents' generation built. Strong labor unions, strong unemployment, strong workers' compensation, strong regulations on the job to keep you safe and healthy. There has been a political party who that's been their sole focus. The Republican Party has been the party of destroying what my grandparents' generation built, which was a prosperous working class. An opportunity for someone who gets up every day, punches a clock, does a day's work to get a fair day's pay. So as I'm going through this with the guy, I'm explaining how difficult it is because he's never done any organizing. He's never been really involved. He's paid his dues. He's voted, on the contracts. He's voted, but that's it. That's the extent of his interest. So when I asked him, hey, this is coming up and I'm talking about the issue, he's, no big deal. I'm going, no, big deal. Have you not paid attention to what happened down in Alabama? Answer, no. So this becomes one of those conversations of, well, this is what happened. They're putting anti-union messages in the bathroom. Can you imagine that happening here? Well, no. They're forcing the workers to come in and sit through captive audience meetings where they bash the union and threaten and intimidate people. Can you imagine that here? Well, no. They fired people because, they were wearing a T-shirt or they were doing, all these things. Can you imagine that happening here? Well, no. Well, why can't you imagine it? And he brought it back to, because we have a union. We have a contract. And you go, yeah, we have a contract. And wouldn't you like to see other people have what you have? And the answer came to yes. So then he goes, well, what does the PRO Act do? Because now he wants to know what the PRO Act is. He was against it because he's heard on right-wing radio that it's bad, can't do this, it's bad. So now he's interested because now he's going, you've made the case that things are bad. You've made the case that people are putting up with things that I would never put up with. How do we help them? So I go, to begin with, it's going to make the system, the election period shorter. You're not going to have months and months of attacks like you saw at Amazon. That kind of treatment's going to stop. No more captive audience meetings. No more harassment like that. No more plastering things in the bathroom to harass you. None of that. There'll be penalties for employers who break the rules. There'll be penalties for these companies who try and illegally bust up our unions. There'll be penalties for if a company fires someone. There'll be real penalties with teeth. Not this, we illegally fired him. Here, we'll give him his back pay back. Oh, wait a minute. He had another job during that time? Made more money? Oh, well, we don't owe him anything. We'll just post a notice and say we're sorry. It's going to help get a first contract. It's hard enough. It's hard enough to have the election and to win the election. But then getting that first contract is near impossible for a lot of places. It would mandate that a first contract within a specific period of time is mandatory. It has to happen. And it's going to make sure that the union secures that first contract. It's going to bolster our right to strike and boycotts. It's going to undo some of the things that Taft-Hartley did. It's going to do away with the idiotic no rights at work stuff. And it's going to make it harder for companies to classify people as independent contractors. It's going to make it harder for them to misclassify people. And he said, well, that sounds all good. So he starts going through, but this is what I've heard. It's going to put my personal information at risk. You go, well, no. I know you're afraid of that, but we already have your information. The employer has your information. Why shouldn't it be shared with the union? Because understand, in the public sector, you can file for any public sector worker's information. Do you think that's wrong? Well, they're public sector, which I always love that argument. He said that, it's gonna take my right to the secret ballot away. He heard. Are we gonna do away with the secret ballot? No, we're not. What we're gonna do is we're gonna give the employer an opportunity to say, okay, you got 80% of the people in my workforce to sign cards. I'm not gonna go through the process. We're just gonna begin to negotiate. When you sign that union card, that's your vote. Seems pretty simple. And he said, but what about this ABC test I've heard something about? And I explained to him what the ABC test is. It's pretty simple. In order to be considered an independent contractor, be your own boss, you have to control your work environment. You have to control your time. And you can't be doing what would be otherwise an employer's tasks. If I'm working for a warehouse, if XYZ warehouse is, having people drive around on forklifts, having to wear the uniform, having to be there when they tell me to be there, and having to do what they tell me when they tell me, while doing what they would normally do anyway, it's a violation of all of the tenets of the ABC rule. You're not truly an independent contractor. And look, I respect people who want to be their own boss. I respect people who want to be independent contractors. The guy who cuts my grass, he's a small business guy. He gets here when he gets here. The person who paved my driveway, same thing. He's an actual small business. Here's where the weird stuff starts happening. And this is where, I didn't get a chance to talk to him about this, but, it came to my attention later in the day, and it got me thinking about some of the people I've used. CNN had a story about these gig workers. And at first I laughed at the story because there was a woman who signed up for this on-demand service app, where she'll do some house cleaning, some handyman work, because she puts furniture together. She's handy. Which, working for handy.com, which, I kind of chuckled, a woman working for handy.com just kind of made me laugh, and I know for the wrong reasons. But when I got to start reading her story of how, now she's going into this thinking they're going to send me on jobs. I can put my service out there. It's going to make it easier for me to be able to get work. And of course, I'm an independent contractor. I can do when I want, how I want. Turns out, as she got into this, mandated to follow us, basically the handy.com folks' time frame, doing jobs that, if she doesn't do on time or to their schedule, she gets fined for. Interestingly enough, if she gets there and says, you know what, I this isn't what you said, there's no backing out. So she's basically this employee who, the story that she told is, and this is an interesting one, she was sent to this place to take out a tree stump and was told that the tree stump was smaller, so she brought tools that she thought would do the job. And she got there and it was much bigger. Tried to do it. Couldn't do it with what she had. Ended up destroying half her tools. She said it cost her like $500 to replace her tools, and she was charged $50 for canceling the job, for not doing the job. She was charged $50 for canceling a job that was more than 100 miles away. And it got me to thinking about some of the people that I've used over the years. I've gone on like Angie's List or one of these apps because, hey, you want. Because the thought was, and this is where I had this epiphany today. The thought was, these folks are local contractors. But now that I'm looking at him going, wait a second, the guy who came and did the roof work the one time, he had an out of the area number now that I think about it. The person that I paid to pave the driveway, I got through one of these services, thought he was a local contractor. Turned out he was a franchisee guy. And you start looking at this stuff and the gimmicks that have gone on, because people just want to have jobs. People want to be able to support their families. And I'm looking at these folks going, they were sold the same thing, much like my truck driver buddies who were sold, hey, you're going to be your own boss. Lease the truck from us. Where are you? Wear the uniform we tell you. Put what's on the side. Be where we tell you. When do we tell you? But you're your own boss. So, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about these franchises and I'm thinking of all these gimmicks that are out there where it's really kind of an employment Ponzi scheme where the worker is taking all the risk, yet not reaping all the benefits. I mean, it's really quite remarkable to me. And I come back to this moment where one of the things that the PRO Act would do is it would do away with this misclassification. It would do away with the kind of cheating that's been going on. And look, if you want to hire people to be handy people, pay them. If people want flexible schedules and flexible hours, that can be done. That's what employers and workers can agree on. That's why you sit down and negotiate a contract. The problem with what's happened all these years is, well, workers are desperate. And they all want to make a living. But when these gimmicks keep popping up, these franchises, and I love the franchises, you're going to pay them for the right to use the equipment that you have to buy. And they'll give you a little bit of snap training, but you're going to pay through the nose, and you're going to bear all of the risk and all the responsibility while constantly having to pay them. Something off to me on there. Look, I'm all in favor of people wanting to be their own boss and start their own business and do those things. I'm all in favor of it. But not in these scam kind of ways. And because the job market has been tough, this is kind of that, I remember back in the old days when I was, back when I was in college, a management trainee, they'd bring you in and they'd send you out on these commission-based runs. It wasn't a job. It was just you hawking stuff, hoping you get a commission. And at the end of the day, you didn't get anything. We got work to do. And I think the PRO Act is a big start of it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up. And the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1984. That was the day Toledo auto workers at AP Parts Plant battled police in an attempt to save their union. The battle unfolded on the 50th anniversary of the historic Toledo Auto Light Strike. 400 members of UAW Local 14 had been on strike against the parts plant since May 2nd. The company imposed a final offer that stripped workers of their seniority rights, ended 30 and out pensions, and cut wages by 40%. They then laid off 175 workers and targeted the rest with a campaign of harassment and discipline. Workers walked off the job when the NLRB dismissed the union's unfair labor practice charges. Local newspapers printed the names and addresses of striking workers in a blatant attempt to blacklist them from area employers. Strikers had it with AP's union-busting tactics, which included paying the hated private goon squad Knuckleus Security $45,000 a week to escort scabs into the plant. The final straw came with an injunction restricting the number of pickets. In an act of solidarity, area unions came together for a show of union strength. Thousands of UAW people from area auto plants joined with striking OCAW refinery workers at the main gate to challenge the new injunction. Police in full riot gear charged the crowd with tear gas, clubs, and pellet guns, beating and arresting dozens of strikers. A pitched battle ensued between workers and police that lasted up to 18 hours until the company was finally forced to eject scabs from the plant. While workers were jubilant, the strike served as a warning about the future of small parts plants. The strike dragged on for months, ending in deep concessions and outsourcing. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Not another good day for Matt Gaetz. Earlier in the week, his best bud, his wingman, Joel Greenberg, turned on him, or we suspect has turned on him. He pleaded guilty to 6 charges, 6 felonies, pretty serious ones. Sex trafficking of a minor, pretty serious. So he's got to be singing. He's got to have something really, really interesting. And all indications pointing at Matt Gaetz. And today the story comes out that evidently an ex-girlfriend, she's cooperating with federal employees in the sex trafficking investigation. Never be in a position where an ex-girlfriend is going to come get you. This ought to be funny. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the wing nuttery of the week. To discuss the Wing Nut Week in Review, I've asked our good friend, the professor, Brett Pransky, to come talk with us. Brett, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, you ever want to be in a position where an ex-girlfriend or an ex-wife or ex-something is spilling the secrets?
Well, it does kind of make you wonder a little bit about the nature of the relationship. I mean, relationships come in all shapes and sizes, but you got to ask yourself, is this the kind of ex-girlfriend who looks in your phone when you're not around? You know what I mean? Because you have to wonder if the girlfriend or the ex-girlfriend is cooperating. You have to ask yourself, what does she have? Because it can't be nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure she's not cooperating, just because. There must be something to it. So she must have heard something or seen something or, and I'd like to know what it was.
Or has a canceled check.
That could be it too. That really could.
Maybe she's got the Venmo account.
Yeah. There could be any number of it. I have no idea. All I know is that the potential information she could have could be literally anything, but we just don't know. I have no idea. I can't speculate.
And it's one of these things where, I have such a low opinion of Matt Gaetz that it really could be the worst possible scenarios one could imagine. Because look, sex trafficking a minor, you can't get much lower than that.
Right. And, with this whole story kind of as it's come out, especially when you think about this Joel Greenberg guy, the number of things that he did and ended up being charged for. I mean, he was imagining all kinds of new ways to commit crimes, all kinds of crimes. And when you see that they wiped the slate clean on, what is the number? Was it 31 or 33 charges? Or they reduced it to 6 that he actually pled to, but there were dozens of charges. And then, so whatever he has or whatever he's saying must be of significant importance in order for them to drop all these other charges and only have him plead to 6 charges out of, several dozen.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. I mean, as we're talking about, in a minute we'll be talking about the January 6th commission and some of the insanity there. You go back to January 6th and you look at all these people who are basically, broadcasting their treason. I got to imagine that Greenberg and Gaetz, because he's been accused of showing pictures on the floor of the House to other representatives. I got to imagine there's video evidence. I got to imagine there's photographs. I got to imagine there's a ton of stuff that didn't make it onto social media.
Yeah, I mean, the possibility is actually, I think it goes beyond possibility. It's a likelihood. If he's in a position to have these images and to share them on the House floor, I'm guessing he wasn't sharing everything he had. I mean, chances are there's, some vault of media out there somewhere that he didn't share with anybody for whatever reason. And again, and that could be incorrect, but, it would track that there's more out there to be seen and to be had, and it could be that's some of the stuff that the ex-girlfriend is involved in talking about.
Now I doubt he led with, "Hey, this is the minor that I was illegally having sex with." I doubt he led with that.
Right? Yeah. So do I.
But again, you got to ask the question. It's this far down the road. There's so many crimes. How did nobody in the Republican Party not know about this all along?
Well, and that's another thing we have to think about when this is all coming out. I mean, of course, we all think that what Joel Greenberg did was turn on Matt Gaetz. That's what everyone is assuming happened. But, we don't know if that's the entirety of what he has turned on. You know what I mean? There have been mentions that this could go, into other places, whether it's in Florida politics or GOP politics at a more national level, whatever the case may be. We don't know how many people are involved. We're focused on Matt Gaetz because, he's such a lightning rod for this kind of stuff. And he's just such a terribly bad human being that it's really easy to focus all our attention on him. But it's quite possible that he is not the only figure who's being rolled on in this.
Going to be interesting to see. And I hope we get to find out. I'm hoping there's where's Court TV when we need it? Exactly. I mean, we should be putting this on C-SPAN.
Yeah, this one needs to be public in every way possible because I want to see this. I want to see this crash. I really do.
Let's move on to some other insanity. Marco Rubio has come out against the January 6th commission. Well, duh.
Yeah, his phone must have rang. He must have got the call. And again, when you think back to 2015 and all these guys were talking tough about Trump, everybody was like, oh, this guy's crazy. This guy's a lunatic. And if we elect him, we'll get destroyed and we deserve it and all these different things. And everybody was talking tough. And now everybody across the board, when he calls and when he says, I want you to do this, they just fall right in line. It's really, when you compare the statements they make now to the statements they made back during campaign time before Trump became president, it's like entirely different human beings. And I mean, on down the list. So it really doesn't surprise me at all that Marco Rubio is like, what's that I'm supposed to say? Okay, let me walk over and parrot that into a microphone. Thank you very much, sir, for calling. You know what I mean? It doesn't surprise me at all that this is his position.
Yeah, but again, that's as you said, back during the campaign, there was a lot of tough talk, a lot of we're going to go out and we're going to duke it out. I look at Ted Cruz, probably the squishiest guy in the Senate. I'll tell you, someone would have said the things about my wife that Trump said about his wife. We'd have been on the stage rolling around.
Right.
But now you got one of his big defenders.
Yeah, and I mean, staunch defender. I mean, never fails to be the first person to trumpet the Trump lies, and that's what's really shocked, because no one has had their dignity demeaned more than by Donald Trump than Ted Cruz, and yet Ted Cruz is the closest thing, the biggest bootlicker of the bunch, and it's really kind of a testament to Ted Cruz's backbone or lack of one, because he really is, he's exactly who we thought he was. And when the time comes and you have a chance to define yourself, this is how he's choosing to define himself. And it's just, it's sad. Well, less sad because it's Ted Cruz, who is just so vile that, watching him fall to pieces is somewhat entertaining. I know that's kind of mean, but it's true. But when someone is this terrible and this consistently vile, watching them do this particular brand of bootlicking is kind of satisfying.
But today he made news attacking the U.S. Army. Evidently, they put out an ad that he did not like. He was insulted. He said because he was against what he called a woke, emasculated Army ad. Now we could probably argue about the ad, but is this the guy to be making the emasculated kind of statement? Yeah,
the problem here is not the what. You know what I mean? Because you could reasonably make the argument that, hey, is this how we want to present the military? You know what I mean? You could make that argument. You can make it from a reasonable place, and some people would agree, some people would disagree, and so on. And that's fine. That's how it's supposed to work. But when it's the one thing you can't do here is be Ted Cruz. You know what I mean? You can't be the most cowardly individual. Did he file his statement from Cancun? I mean, you can't be that and be someone who is so consistently been weak and then demean literally anything the military does. It should just be off limits. commentary on the military should be the third rail for Ted Cruz. He should just know better. You know what I mean? Let everybody else argue about what we should and shouldn't do, what's the right way to advertise or recruit or whatever it is you're trying to do. But you can't be Ted Cruz and weigh in on this. You just can't.
Especially using the word emasculated. I mean, when I saw that, anything else, I go, yeah. The second he hit that, I'm going, you are literally the poster child for emasculated.
I know. He's a giant pile of mashed potatoes. I mean, he's literally the weakest, the weakest guy imaginable. And again, and he's earned that. You can't take the kind of abuse he has taken and say nothing and then turn around and completely, just bend the knee to the guy who did this to you and stay there for years and years and years, and then claim to have any opinion on what is masculine and what is not. It's just, you can't do that. It's so unbelievably hypocritical. I'm surprised he wasn't struck by lightning in the middle of the statement.
Or at least somebody, some child or somebody to put him in line.
Or assault, something.
Which leads me to Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, we go from squishy to just outright crazy. And again, I still think it was a huge mistake for the Democrats to take her committee assignments away because she's got nothing better to do but to cause nonsense. Evidently, she is now, am I getting this right? She's now comparing having to wear a mask to the Holocaust?
Yeah, I saw that, and it was frighteningly stupid. When it comes to people who serve in Congress or really serve at any level, you want two things. You want an active mind and a servant's heart. Now, you can settle for either one of those. You don't have to be the sharpest crayon in the box if you have a servant's heart, and you can get around some failings if you're the smartest person in the room. But when you have neither, and then you reach a level of this kind of power, and you have none of the tools that you need to be of use to anybody. Like basic logical statements, like a public safety, rule asking you to wear a mask so other people can live is something that you compare to the Holocaust. Now, what you can do with that is real simple. Take mask wearing and pull that out of the equation and put in any other rule that we have in place anywhere about anything. All right. Seatbelts, speed limits. They're all the exact same thing. They're public health, concerns and things we do to save lives. And you can so you're telling me that speed limits are like the Holocaust. Really? Is that what we're getting at here? And I know masks are the political flavor of the week. And it's the thing that they use to stir up their outrage. But just looking at the basic logic of it, it makes absolutely zero sense. All right, speed limits are a good thing. They save lives. We have the data to prove it. Same thing with masks. All right, you may not like it. There are times when, maybe I don't want to drive through my neighborhood at 25 miles an hour. Maybe I want to drive through my neighborhood at 85 miles an hour. But you know what? That's not very safe, and there's a rule against it. So I follow the rule because it's what's best for everybody. And this is no different. And to see her compare this to the Holocaust of all things, it's ridiculous to a degree I don't even have the words to describe. And I'm an English professor, so that's really saying something.
Yeah. And speaking of crazy, you'll go on to the other, from Georgia to Colorado, you've got gun fetish Barbie, Lauren Boebert, who evidently is claiming that Texas hasn't had a single death due to COVID-19 since it lifted all of its restrictions 2 months ago. Hasn't had a single one. Yeah,
that's just flat out not true. But then again, this has become, pretty common on the right these days. I mean, think about just the other day. There was a meeting at the White House where, Republican leadership, and they were talking about, about the next bill, the American Jobs Plan, and what we're going to do with it and so on. And Kevin McCarthy afterwards comes out, and I believe he was still on the White House grounds when he said it, and he said, no one really questions the outcome of the 2020 election. And I guarantee you that evening, he said the exact opposite thing into a microphone on some right-wing source somewhere.
Right.
They literally say things that they know aren't true. And then they turn around and say the exact opposite thing, somewhere else. And they never, ever, ever expect anyone to care.
Yeah, in fact, he said that on the very day that CBS and YouGov came out with a poll that said 2/3 of the Republican Party doesn't believe Joe Biden is the legitimate president.
Yeah, but it's okay because he said it out loud. So that poll doesn't really matter because Kevin McCarthy said nobody really questions it into a microphone. And now later on, he'll be like, hey, everyone questions it. And that will then be true as well. They just lift out a previous truth and insert another truth over top of it. And again, because truth itself has no real value to them, they just keep replacing it with whatever they want. So, for example, we have this phrase, my truth. You're hearing this all over the place on the right. That's my truth. That's what I believe. Well, that's great, but you don't get your truth. You get your opinion. You don't get your facts. You know what I mean? You don't get your truth is a thing that exists outside of, of you and I. Things are true or they're untrue. They can be false. You can have an opinion on this is better than that and so on. You can have your own opinions. You can't have your own set of facts. I'm half tempted to just write a letter to Nancy Pelosi and say, tomorrow, please step in front of a microphone and say the sky is blue because I want to see Kevin McCarthy come out and say it's green. You know what I mean? It's nonsensical what they do, and we should be insulted by it a lot more than we are.
No, you're absolutely right. I look at this unemployment thing. It doesn't matter what Joe Biden does; they're going to be against it. And I'm part of me is shocked, part of me is outraged, but the other part of me is not either of those because this is what I expect from the Republicans. We haven't seen the outrage that I would hope from literally trying to take food out of the mouths of children. It's frustrating and angering.
Yeah, I mean the thing that's frustrating and angering about it is that they're not following the basic rules of the economy. All right, we gave those benefits to people because they needed them because people were starving. It was the right thing to do. It's still the right thing to do. But now there are positions out there that don't pay enough money, have never paid enough money, and people don't want to do them, so these jobs aren't filling. That's how it's supposed to work. And in a couple rooms from me right now, I have a PlayStation 5. It was incredibly hard to get. They're not manufacturing them fast enough. No one could get one. All right. And I really wanted one. So you know what I did? I paid more than it was worth. I paid significantly more than the retail price in order to get it. Why? Because I wanted it. I had the disposable income. I wanted it. So I paid the price. The same should be true of all the different places that can't find workers. If you can't find workers, pay them. Pay them a higher wage.
Yep.
If you pay them, they will come. It's just, it's kind of like Field of Dreams. If you pay them, they will come. If you don't pay them, you can always count on Republicans to pull their benefits. I mean, it's just, it's insane. And it's not how the market's supposed to work.
Yeah, no, and it is just that simple. But what an interesting week it has been. But Brett, I appreciate you taking some time, sharing some thoughts and some of your linguistic expertise. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Our good friend, the Professor Brett Pransky. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day that Democratic President Harry S. Truman ordered the government seizure of the nation's bituminous coal mines. 800,000 United Mine Workers of America, led by John L. Lewis, had gone out on strike. A wave of strikes washed over the United States after World War II. As part of the war effort, most unions had agreed not to conduct work actions during the war. But as industry profits soared due to wartime government contracts, workers saw little improvements in their wages or working conditions. Pent-up worker frustration boiled over after the war. Historian Jeremy Breacher had noted that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics called the first half of 1946, quote, the most concentrated period of labor management strife in the country's history. The miners were part of that strife. They wanted improved wages, better health care benefits, and safety on the job. The strike had a ripple effect felt far beyond the coal fields. In early May, the Chicago Tribune warned, quote, "The nation's worst coal strike tonight slowed the wheels of American industry toward a predictable full stoppage." Coal turned the wheels of industry, and the strike had drastically slowed mining. The government seized the mines and ordered the miners back to work. But still, the coal companies refused to meet the coal miners' demands. Unsatisfied with the resolution of the strike, the miners walked out again in November. The government fined the union $3.5 million, which it later reduced. President Truman called the work actions a rebellion against the government. But the determination of the miners forced the owners to agree to most of their demands. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Joe Manchin back in the news. Good old Joe. You know, it's one of these things where you just go, what's it going to take for Joe Manchin to wake up? Evidently today he, with the reality that Republicans are about ready to filibuster the creation of the January 6th Commission, he's now disheartened. Disheartened. He seemed aghast, is what one report was, but so disheartening, he said. It makes you really concerned about our country. Manchin added that when he was asked if the GOP was abusing the filibuster, he said that he's still praying. We've got 10 good, solid patriots within that conference. Yeah. This is, again, one of these moments where, what's that saying? Wish in one hand and something else in the other. See which one fills up first. This is that wishing. There's nothing coming. These are not patriots. These are people who, as we've been saying, these are people who, when the phone call comes, they march in line. These are folks who follow the leader or the leader with the money. These are people who they're going to defiantly look into the camera and tell you what you already know they're going to do. They're going to, like Marco Rubio. You knew he was against the commission, but now he's got a reason. He's going to stand there. He's going to fight for something. Yeah, to cover up what happened on January 6th. Because ultimately, look, we're going to have all the hearings. We're going to have all of the trials, and that stuff's going to happen. We're going to get the people who broke the windows and dumped on the floor. We're going to get those folks. We're certainly they're going to be held accountable. No question about it. Most certainly, we're going to hold them accountable. It for me is, those people in Congress who did a whole bunch of stuff. Riling people up, organizing bus trips. And for me, it's the moneyed people. That's what I really want to know about. So by saying we're not going to have a commission to look into any of this is basically letting the people who I think are really responsible, really culpable for this, letting them off. And doing it in a way where we knew he was against it from the beginning because he's walking in line. And for me, it's angering and just incredibly frustrating for somebody like Manchin who, he's disheartened. I'm hoping. We got stuff that needs to get done. And the Republicans have already told us nothing's getting done. Mitch McConnell has already come out. His number one goal, stopping this administration with this new infrastructure plan. Now you may remember, Biden had a pretty sizable infrastructure plan. Evidently today, the White House reached out to Senate Republicans and said that they're reducing their proposal down to $1.7 trillion in the hopes that there are 10 Republicans who are going to come along because you can't count on Manchin. Evidently, there was a meeting today, and you brought in about a half a dozen Republicans. Shelley Moore Capito from West Virginia. Why is it that West Virginia is right now the most important state in the country? Because you got her negotiating for the Republicans if there are any left, and you got Manchin who's going, no, I'm not going to do anything because I'm still hoping, I'm still praying. It's, I get it. I get the administration saying, "Hey, we need to get something done. We need a win." And look, if the 1.7 trillion passes and we can get that moving by summertime, get some projects out the door, get people back to work, start getting the economy rolling, all in favor of it. But I look at this and I'm going, they're not going to agree to this because what did they come back with the other day? What was it? 400 billion, 600. I mean, you're talking about nearly a third of what Biden's asking for. It wasn't even close to that before. And you go, when do we wake up and go, use the power you have? The Republican strategist Rick Wilson the other day, said what I've been saying for forever. When you get the power to do something, do it. Use what you have. And this is what Republicans do masterfully. When they're in control, they know how to drive the steamroller. They do the things that they want regardless. They didn't want a Supreme Court justice being appointed by Obama. What'd they do? For almost a year, they held up that nominee. For half a year, they held up Merrick Garland. They wanted a Supreme Court justice. Didn't matter. Didn't matter that it was completely different, completely opposite of what happened during the Obama term. They made up an excuse. They made up a reason of why they could go forward because they were doing it anyway. And they got rid of the filibuster. Hey, well, we're going to do it for Supreme Court. We're doing it. And I had people telling me when I said, you're going to have to use what you have to stop the Gorsuch nomination because they're going to break the filibuster anyway. So this is part of me going, I just want to see the filibuster done. Be done with it. And get stuff done. And, I've had these conversations numerous times with folks who are going, no, we can't do that because, the Republicans are crazy. Once they get control, they're going to do all kinds of horrible stuff. And I go, you're probably right. And this is where, if that's a possibility, because understand, the Republicans have already told us, and this is reality. I go into wanting to end the filibuster with my eyes wide open to the possibility that once Republicans take power, again, and it will happen at some point, that they will destroy Social Security. They will privatize Social Security like they wanted to do during the Bush years. They will hand it over to their criminal friends on Wall Street, and seniors are going to get screwed. And all of those those angry old white guys who are the big Trump supporters, all the angry old white guys who are saying, get your government hands off my Medicare. They're going to get the short end of the stick. And when they're left sitting on the street corner going, well, what happened? When they're back to eating cat food. Then maybe we wake up and we realize that these people don't care about us. They care about their criminal friends on Wall Street. And there's some Democrats too, don't get me wrong. There's equal problems. But the Republicans have already told us they will privatize it all. There'll be no safety net left. There'll be desperation. And we'll be back to the days of the Lochner era unemployment where, hey, if you're hungry enough and desperate enough to work for poverty wages and desperate conditions and dangerous conditions, that's your freedom. You can do it. They'll deregulate to the point to where, well, you knew drinking water could cause cancer. That's your problem. And you go, but Rick, you're being hyperbolic. No, they have told us this is what they want. This is the America that they want. They want a privatized America. There are parts, I remember stories, over the last couple of years of Republican counties wanting to privatize their fire departments, wanting to privatize their police departments, because they don't believe in government of, for, and by the people. They believe in profit motives. And this idea that, well, the free market will handle it is ludicrous. There's no free market. They keep gaming the system. They keep handing power over to those who have the most power. The fact that we've got so many billionaires who have such control. I mean, we've got foundations. And this is the thing that's really quite remarkable to me. We've got these foundations like the Bradley Foundation and the Olin Foundation and all these that fund these right-wing groups. These guys have been dead for years. And yet from the grave, they're still, with their ideology, they're still determining our politics. It's really quite remarkable what we've allowed to happen. So is it possible? Is it possible that what we'll end up seeing is a banana republic where, we'll vote for one administration and the policies go crazy to one side and then they go back to the other side and we have these wild swings? Or at some point, and this is where my mindset has always been. My mindset has always been in this world of, can we get some bit of sanity in our policy? Can we the voters decide? Can we the voters actually, run the country? Because if you've listened to this show any longer than 15 minutes, you know I blame us for everything that's going on. We voted for these people. Our neighbors voted for these people. We're in this polarized world because we don't talk to each other anymore. We're in this world because, hey, hooray for me and the heck with my neighbor. I got mine, screw him. Because we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs. Greed is good. The one with the most toys at the end wins. And of course, we're going to vote for selfish, self-centered, greedy politicians. When does it stop? It comes down to the question. Now I go back to this infrastructure bill. I'd love to see a giant chunky infrastructure bill. Something that's going to create the jobs that we need. Will the Republicans let it happen? I don't think so on any level. I don't care how much they give. I don't see the Republicans ever agreeing. I just don't. Because they know politically it's a win for Biden. Moving along, Janet Yellen. Remember, I talked about Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, the other day, who went in front of the Chamber of Commerce and said, hey, guys, business leaders, you need to let your workers unionize so that they can get some of your profits in the form of wages. I'm sure that went over like a lead balloon. She also said, hey, we need you to pay more taxes. I'm sure that went over like a lead balloon as well. Kind of like someone with gas in an elevator. She's now come out and she's talking about corporations around the world should be forced to pay a 15% tax globally. Now, this is something that we've desperately needed for a long time. Thanks to Trump and their tax scheme, corporations have been able to shirk their responsibility to this country by moving profits overseas because they've moved in that territorial tax that allows them to shift things around and get away from paying taxes. What Yellen's saying is, there's a race to the bottom going on globally, not just here in the U.S., but globally, as countries are going, hey, come over to us because we'll not make you pay any taxes. And what you end up having are these tax havens, Ireland, the Cayman Islands, where companies move like a headquarters or something, and all the profits get funneled through there, and everyone gets the short end of the stick. The globe is having a problem operating and having governments being paid for, and that's why we're seeing this rise of right-wing insanity. There has to be something along the lines of another Bretton Woods Accord. There has to be another global agreement to stop allowing these corporations to run the world. There's got to be, and this is the hard part here is, how do you get China to come on board with this when China is literally racing everyone to the bottom? How do you get them to play along? You know, it was easier back in the 40s when Keynes and the rest of the world sat down and came up with the Bretton Woods Accord and divvied up the world. It was easy. They erected capital borders and did all these things that helped really build a global prosperity. What we've now done is we've grown massive wealth for, a small number of global citizens, while continuing to have massive poverty in parts of the world and diminished opportunities for a lot of workers in the first world. Which is why you're seeing all of this violence, and it's not going away. This kind of tension, this kind of anger. I was standing out on the poll on election day. You could see who the Republicans were. They were angry. They are now the party of really angry people. And it's not just on election day, I'd imagine, because they were just angry. And it comes back to, that diminished opportunity, that life didn't turn out the way we were told it was going to. So I'm in favor of this idea, the idea of having a global tax to ensure that you don't have companies jumping around the globe looking for exploitable tax codes. I'm in favor of having global regulation on labor standards and environmental standards, so you don't have companies, with these CEOs who are hooked on cheap labor and lax environmental regulations. I'm in favor of that. There has to be some kind of global cooperation, because if governments can't come together and do it, corporations already have. I pointed out the other day to a friend that, we have an oligarchy in this country. He was talking about the Russian oligarchs, and I said, well, we've got them here too. It's called the Business Roundtable. They're our shadow government. They're the ones who are probably more powerful than our own government, because they could crash our economy if they really wanted to. When we tell them they can't have all the pie, they could throw a temper tantrum. And that would be troubling. But for me, I'm glad Janet Yellen's talking like this. We need more workers in unions. We need higher tax rates on corporate America, and we need global tax rates. It's going to be interesting to see how she's received on the international stage. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1949. That was a very important day for workers on the islands of Hawaii. It marked the passage of the Federal Hawaii Employment Relations Act, more popularly known as the Little Wagner Act. The Wagner Act had granted the right to unionize to most non-agricultural workers in the United States. The Little follow-up to the act extended the right to join a union to Hawaiian agricultural workers. The International Longshoremen and Warehousemen Union were instrumental in pushing for this legislation. Robert Kumanera, who had worked on the island of Koloa, reflected on the significance of the right to join a union, saying, "It was not a matter of wages and conditions, but pride. Because when you say you work for the plantation, you were pitied, that it was synonymous with $1 a day, and that you were living in one old plantation shack. So, union, to me, union is pride." 1 year after winning the right to organize, sugar plantation workers participated in a massive strike. Some 26,000 workers embarked upon a 79-day strike against the plantation bosses, effectively shutting down 33 of 34 plantations on the island. The strike was seen as a turning point for labor relations in Hawaii. Workers across ethnic lines joined together in solidarity against the paternalistic plantation system. During the strike, the workers received broad community support. As Kumanuro stated, it was a matter of pride for the workers. In 1943, before the Little Wagner Act, there were 13 labor contracts in Hawaii. By 1947, that number had multiplied to 166 labor contracts. Union representation was now a reality for Hawaiian workers, and there was nothing little about that. Labor history in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the panel of the week, Wingnut Week in Review. All of the crazy stuff that has gone on over the past week, all of the nuttery, all of the insanity, all of the Matt Gaetz, the Trumps, just another week in America. And here to share some thoughts on the top stories of this week, our all-star panel of Sarah Burris, Rich Ojeda, and Scott Dworkin. Guys, thanks for tuning in.
You're born.
Hey, happy Friday.
So let's start with what an interesting week of House votes this has been. And even look, some of the interesting corporate media takes. Let's start with the first one. On Tuesday, you had the House of Representatives voting 364 to 62 on the Hate Crimes Act, the Asian American and Pacific Islanders. You had 62 Republicans in the House vote for hate, and one in the Senate, Josh Hawley, say, yep, we want to go hating on those Asians. Let's start with you, Scott. Thoughts?
I spoke with Senator Hirono about the bill, and she called, I think that she's sick of Hawley's antics, and she called him lame. Like, she was like, I'm over this. This is so lame of him. It's a lame excuse that it didn't cover the right aspects, and it just covered for a certain amount of people, like just excuse after excuse. So she kind of just was just like, what do you expect from someone like that? As to the excuse for the 62 Republicans who voted against it, I don't think that they know why they voted against it. They just voted against it. And it doesn't make any sense. It has no logic behind it besides they don't want to piss off the racist base. And that's all I see there. So I think it's a winning week for America in that respect, that, it's signed into law and we're good to go. I think that we have a lot of other things we need to take care of in regards to hate crimes, but this is a good start.
Yeah, I know my representative, Scott Perry, here in central Pennsylvania, he was on, again, the wrong side of history, and I'm hoping at some point someone takes him out electorally, that is, in the next election. Let's go to you, Rich, speaking of taking people out. Your thoughts on this?
I just think it's a bunch of cowards who are looking at this. Donald Trump, called it the China virus. He called it Kung flu. And of course, by doing that, eventually Fox News started running with it. It's hatred is what it is. And these people are too big of cowards to do what's right. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people in Washington, D.C. that absolutely should be doing the right thing, but won't because they're beholden to Donald Trump. And I really believe that a lot of them who voted against this was specifically doing that because, they refuse to accept the fact that Donald Trump made America hate again, and he spewed racist every time he opened his pie hole.
No, I mean, some people I had email me over the week were trying to make Josh Hawley out to be this profiles in courage. He was standing up against the mob and the cancel culture and all the woke, the mayors of Wokistan. I'm going, he's the only guy in the Senate.
The
Sarah, your thoughts?
Bootlicking.
Exactly.
Bootlicking. Yeah, no, I agree with the guys, but I think that instead of it just being about voting for hate, I think that it doesn't matter what bill is put before Congress. I think they're going to vote against it if it's a Democratic bill. It could be a bill commemorating, Jesus Christ as our personal savior, and they would vote against it. It could be, naming apple pie the American, fruit pie, and they would just be like, oh, how dare you be against cherry pie? They would come up with a reason for literally everything. And it's just that it's coming from a Democrat. If we had any Asian Republicans, are there any Asian Republicans? I don't think there are there?
Not that I know of.
If they had any, presumably they would have been at the bill signing, because really the only people that were there, I saw in Politico complaining that the only people that were there were Democrats. And I was like, well, yeah, but they were all Asian. Like, the people that were there weren't there because they were Democrats. They were there because it was an anti-Asian hate bill. And those are the people that were present. Like, that doesn't make any sense that you would be like, oh, this is a bipartisan. No, it was a very bipartisan bill. It's just that there are a bunch of Republicans who, it doesn't matter what you try to do, they're going to vote against it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I wanted to see the headline, 63 Republicans pro-hate. That's the one I wanted to see, because, I'm looking at the headline of the vote for the funding for the Capitol Police, which, this is one of those interesting votes, but the headline screams, squad vote against Capitol Police funding makes Pelosi scramble. And I'm going, what happened to the other headline, which is 209 Republicans voted against the Capitol Police? Where's that screaming headline? Let's start with you, Rich. I mean, at the end of the day, not one Republican voted for funding this, and yet they're going to focus on these handful of Democrats who I believe, had the vote been shot down, would have voted for it to let it go forward.
Yeah, I mean, the squad, shouldn't be the ones getting all the attention right here. This should be the most protected building in the world, and it absolutely should. And Capitol Police, they should have already had body cameras. Had they had body cameras on January the 6th, we probably would have known a lot more of these people and would have already found a lot of these people who participated in this riot. This is for training. It's for riot control equipment. To me, it is absolutely the right thing to do. Now, you may have a couple people that want to follow that defund the police. But I mean, other than that, the fact that the Republicans continued to absolutely just spit in the face of these Capitol Police officers is absolutely sickening, and that's what should be on the news right now. The mere fact that you have Republicans that are saying that this didn't even happen. You have Republicans downplaying the violence and acting like it wasn't a big deal. I just feel so grateful that there was enough people that had photographs that took pictures of that jackaloon from Georgia that was helping to barricade the door, who said that it didn't even happen. That's the kind of stuff, that is absolutely sickening. And these Republicans that did not vote to fund the Capitol Police, that right there is a news story. I don't care about the squad or what the squad does. If they're defund the police, I don't care about that. I focus on these police officers getting what they need to be able to secure that Capitol.
Now, here's my thought, and Scott, you're the both you and Sarah are the experts on the political side of DC. You had Cori Bush from Missouri, Ilhan Omar from Minnesota, and Presley, who voted against the bill with all the Republicans. You had three Democrats, Jamal Bowman, AOC, and Rashid Tlaib of Michigan, who voted, present. Had the two Republicans who voted, they didn't bother voting. They were just absent, I guess. Had they voted with the Republicans, I think AOC or Bowman or Tlaib would have cast the ballot, yes, to make sure that this bill got through. But this was just, I think this is important for saying that they have some concerns. Let's start with you, Sarah. Your thoughts first?
I think you're spot on. I think Pelosi would have come up to the ladies and said, "Look, I'm going to need your vote on this." And there are some of them that could take that vote and be absolutely fine. But Rich is right. This is a conversation that we should be having, that the Republican Party just voted to defund the Capitol Police. I agree. I don't understand why that is not on every single cable news station, on every single newspaper headline. And these Republicans, yes, they're denying that it happened, but now they're voting against this idea of securing themselves. I mean, if another one of these things happen, which, we're led to believe they want to have another one, then you would think that they would want some kind of protection for themselves, but maybe not. Maybe they've got a death wish for themselves, or maybe they decide that they think that they can open fire on somebody, and a crowd of 500 people, and somehow their little bitty gun clip could make them, scare everybody away.
Yeah, Rambo Bobert. There she is.
Yeah, gun crazy Barbie.
Scott, your thoughts?
I mean, it is what it is. Is that what they used to say? I mean, it's just they don't. It's the same thing that Richard was just saying. Like, they don't want to admit that it was real, and if they vote for it, then it's real. If they vote for the AAPI bill, then hate crimes against Asians exist, and that stems from Donald, right? And that stems from them supporting them. So the same thing with, if you need funding, that means that they weren't funded. You see what I'm saying? And so the excuse is going to be, well, they don't need it. We're good. Like, look at all the money that Pelosi's wasting on security there. Like that, I see that they'll explain away anything.
Right.
They're explaining away. But I think that, this is something that I will gladly, and I'm sure Rich and others will gladly make people remember in 2022 and 2024, 2023, on and on and on and on, because this is just straight up and down right versus wrong, and they voted against it. Not only that, it's not just this vote. We have the vote where they voted against awarding medals to people who saved their lives. Like, that was baffling. Some of them who died, some of them committed suicide. And so, and the craziest thing about it is, they even voted against, obviously, the special committee to put together. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, okay, my one question is, if Ashley Babbitt is a martyr to y'all in any sort, then why wouldn't you want to investigate her death? Oh, well, we know everything we need to know about that. And it's like, no, we don't. Like, the families deserve justice. The families, you have to, what are you going to say to Officer Sicknick's family and the officers who committed suicide and the hundreds of officers who got injured that day and are never going to return back to work? What are you going to say to them when you voted against? This is one of the routes of preventing it from ever happening again, is getting that funding. If we don't have that funding, then it's just for nothing, Yeah. And we need to get them money right now.
Yeah. Now, you brought up the January 6th commission vote this week, 252 to 175. Again, the majority of Republicans, 175 of them, voted against. You had 35 Republicans who voted for the January 6th commission. Donald Trump went on the record of calling them wayward House Republicans. Were you surprised it was as few or as many as it was? Let's start with you, Rich.
Well, first off, the reason why these Republicans are against this is because it's going to implicate them. That's exactly what this is. This is about what Donald Trump did before, what he did during, what he did after. There are people in the Capitol that were with Donald Trump that said that the first 2 hours, which were the most violent, he was watching the television with a smile on his face. That's the reason. These Republicans are cowards, and they're going to continue voting against these things because they know that the January 6th commission is not about the people that attacked the Capitol. That's already going on. People have already been charged. Some of them have already been sentenced. This is about the actions of the people that gave the tours the day before to find out what happened. What was the conversation that they had? Who messed with those panic buttons? What did Donald Trump do to cultivate this crowd? What were the speeches that were given to fire these people up? They pointed the people in towards the Capitol and squeezed the trigger. And that's what they don't want. Donald Trump definitely doesn't want this. And these Republicans are cowards, and they're cowards to Donald Trump. And that's how come they're going to do everything in their power to try to stop it. Kevin McCarthy is even saying, we've already got people under investigation. Yeah, he's talking about the people that attacked the Capitol. But he knows, he's smart enough to know that this January 6th commission don't have nothing to do with the jackaloon that put his feet on Nancy Pelosi's desk. It has to do with him and him being complicit in all of it.
And for me, the money to interests that created all of this, the people who paid for the buses, people who paid Alex Jones, the whole 9 yards. Sarah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. This is something that, I would say too, if you haven't read the letter from the Capitol Police talking about this vote, that is the most incredible letter I have ever read. It calls them out in a way that I don't think anybody else could, where they were just like, the reason that you guys were not terrified on that day is because we were standing between you and them. We saved your ass. You know, we fought back against these people to make sure that you were protected, and now you're abandoning us. And I mean, it's one of the things that you hear. So my father used to be a firefighter, and before he retired, and I remember him saying that, you know, when we were going for a PAC meeting for the Firefighters Association, he was just like, I think the most important thing that you can say is we've got your back. We've got your backs on healthcare. We've got your backs on your pensions. We've got your backs on everything. And I think in this instance, it's the same thing, where they expect Congress, the people who are paying their salary, to have their backs too. And they clearly didn't, and they still don't, and they don't care. And it just, you know, for all of these people who wave these blue line flags and who, you know, sing the national anthem in jail and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then, you know, they celebrate defunding the Capitol Police. And this is where we are now. This is who Congress is. It's disgusting.
No, I'm right there with you, Scott. You want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the January 6th Commission, you know, if they have a choice to make, and it's just a bad outcome for them no matter what, because there's only two choices to make.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this real quick, because we're going to go to a break here in a minute. Did the Democrats wait too long to do this? Did they give them the opportunity to change the narrative and rewrite history? Shouldn't this have been done a couple of months ago?
No, we couldn't have. We just couldn't have. We didn't have the manpower. We didn't have enough people. We weren't organized enough. No, it couldn't have happened. If they tried, I also think that I think this is short, because for 9/11 it took 14 months. So this is a short period of time for Congress. To be honest, I've pushed as hard as I can. Rich and everybody else here has pushed as hard as they can. But yeah, I think this is short for Congress.
Now, the talk is they're going to end, the end of the year is when the commission will end, right? So you're talking about a truncated a commission. You know, how much work can they do in that short period of time?
If there is
such crap.
If there is a commission, if it's not a commission, then that is the worst decision that they've ever made, because I promise you we'll have a select committee set up, just like Kurt Bardell was talking about, just like Benghazi. And I'll tell you what, you don't want that. You don't want that if you're a Republican and you're an accomplice.
Now, aren't they saying that just because the Senate voted against it, that the House can still run a January 6th commission with just in the House?
Don't tell anybody that, though.
Fair point.
But that's correct.
Yeah. And we'll see how this plays out. Could be another I guess a little payback on the Benghazi. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rudy. 18 devices they captured. Right back with this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1984. That was the day Toledo auto workers at AP Parts Plant battled police in an attempt to save their union. The battle unfolded on the 50th anniversary of the historic Toledo Auto Light Strike. 400 members of UAW Local 14 had been on strike against the parts plant since May 2nd. The company imposed a final offer that stripped workers of their seniority rights, ended 30 and out pensions, and cut wages by 40%. They then laid off 175 workers and targeted the rest with a campaign of harassment and discipline. Workers walked off the job when the NLRB dismissed the union's unfair labor practice charges. Local newspapers printed the names and addresses of striking workers in a blatant attempt to blacklist them from area employers. Strikers had had it with AP's union-busting tactics, which included paying the hated private goon squad Knuckle's security $45,000 a week to escort scabs into the plant. The final straw came with an injunction restricting the number of pickets. In an act of solidarity, area unions came together for a show of union strength. Thousands of UAW people from area auto plants joined with striking OCAW refinery workers at the main gate to challenge the new injunction. Police in full riot gear charged the crowd with tear gas, clubs, and pellet guns, beating and arresting dozens of strikers. A pitched battle ensued between workers and police that lasted up to 18 hours until the company was finally forced to eject scabs from the plant. While workers were jubilant, the strike served as a warning about the future of small parts plants. The strike dragged on for months, ending in deep concessions and outsourcing. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the big story this week, federal prosecutors seized 18 electronic devices that belong to Rudy Giuliani. I can't wait I hope we get to find out what's on all of these. Did he have a separate device for each set of crimes, each country and those sets of crimes? How did he divide up those 18 devices? Going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Can't wait to hear him squeal and sing. But here to share some thoughts on the device, all the devices, our good friend Scott Dworkin from the Democratic Coalition, Sarah Burris from RawStory, and of course Rich Ojeda from No Dem Left Behind. Guys, thanks for sticking around. So let's start with you, Scott. Giuliani got a cell phone taken. Is that a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, because what they say in this explanation of it is that it was not just his information; it was other people at this Giuliani Partners. They had, not just cell devices, but I believe their data as well, which means that they have the back end. They probably subpoenaed Apple or whatever they had on the back end. But these devices, what we have to remind people of is that it's not just communication tools, it's storage tools as well. So, these are hard drives. And I'll tell you, when you're looking for crimes, you're probably going to find it if it's in Giuliani's office. But it's very dangerous. I mean, you could be talking about a former client or someone he was representing. It could be Donald's not cell phone, but it could be Donald's kind of like his private cell phone that he used with Donald. I mean, this guy is sitting down. He was obviously on Borat. He got caught up in that, and then he was butt dialing reporters and having conversations about illegal things. It just, the guy's turned into an oaf. He's a joke. And I remember I met him in 2001, a month after 9/11 at Carmine's in Little Italy in New York City. It was my birthday, and he just it was random. He just kind of walked in. So I have like pictures with him, and I'll tell you, he was like, he was like a national hero at that time. And I just haven't seen since like Lance Armstrong a fall from grace.
Yeah, he was America's mayor. He was America's mayor. And then, he became the guy who lobbied for the Mujahideen Khalq. How you go from that to that, I don't know.
Money, corruption, evil.
Exactly. Yet, Sarah, thoughts on the devices? What are we going to find?
Oh man, wouldn't it be great if it was like one indictment per device? I don't think it's going to be like that, but so they did seize the iCloud data in 2019. That was the first thing that they grabbed. So everything that he had talked about before he switched phones, before he decided to, swap something out and break a SIM card or whatever, they've captured that piece of it. So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that even if you delete it, like that's the thing is you cannot delete anything anymore. Everything can be pulled back. And so I think that he is, he's a doddering old fool who doesn't know any better. And one of the things that somebody was telling me a couple of weeks ago is that whenever he, in between that time where when he first became mayor and when he, left the DA's office, that he was really just as crazy. And that he's always been a little bit nutty and a little bit off. And one of the interesting things is that he went from being a federal prosecutor, like a really big wig in the Justice Department, being demoted to a DA. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, and nobody really knows the reason for it. Nobody knows, was it a choice? Was it, what is that about? What did he do? And then he just basically got lucky having people who could chase the mafia for him. So, which again, you would think that he would have learned something from all of the crime, right? I mean, there's something about if you work for the DOJ, if you work for the DA's office, and you've arrested all of these people, you would think that you would know how to hide stuff.
Yeah, well, but one would think that he thinks he's smarter. Like any criminal, they're always smarter.
What a fool.
Rich, I wanted to get your thoughts because, one of the arguments that I get from people all the time is, well, they that's illegal. They broke into his residence and his office because they have attorney-client privilege because he was the president's attorney, and this is just a witch hunt, Rich. That's all it is.
This is a guy that could have continued with the legacy of America's mayor, and he has just become a huge joke. He's a laughing stock. How many honest people need to have 18 burner phones? And we all know that, they use burner phones when they're, drug dealers use burner phones. Here's a guy that, they got his iCloud, like Sarah said, and on the iCloud, they got him talking to Lev Parnas's lawyer, basically hinting to him, I'm going to have to change the phone. This guy has thrown it all away. He is an absolute joke. To me, it's his legacy. He could have had a phenomenal legacy, and he has completely ruined it to support Donald Trump, who absolutely, I think, has yet to pay him, who absolutely will throw him under the bus. It's sad, but let's hope that each and every one of those devices that they got will be able to, implicate not only him, but the people in his circle. I want to see all of these people go down because, they have absolutely attacked our democracy. And the stunts in reference to the election, for them to sit and claim, that the voting machines were rigged. I mean, they literally attacked a company that was just basically providing the materials to be able to have a fair election, and then that company's going to go after them. But I hope that on all of these 18 devices that they were able to secure, I hope that they find the Holy Grail and it absolutely nails every one of them to the wall, because we need to see that. I don't want to see Rudy Giuliani walk. I don't want to see Rudy Giuliani get a slap on the wrist. These people deserve to go down. No,
I'm right there with you. And you brought up the election claims that there was mass fraud, there was all this stuff, and you look at what's going on in Arizona right now, where the comments coming out from election officials, Republican election officials in Arizona, calling it a grift disguised as an audit, a sham process, a circus. It's time to be done with the craziness. You've got the Maricopa County recorder, a guy named Stephen Richer, a Republican, saying that Trump claimed Saturday that the entire database of Maricopa County has been deleted, that it was illegal, and that the Senate's all upset. He goes, it's a bold-faced lie. They never happened. And you also have the Attorney General who's come out, the Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs of Arizona, saying, we can't use these machines anymore. It's all got to go, because we gave it over to these crazy people, and who knows what they've done with it. Sarah, let's start with you. Do they ever get to use those machines again?
No, they've totally been compromised. And, that's going to cost Maricopa County a whole lot of money. At the same time, I don't know if you saw that Joe Arpaio is going to end up costing the county something like $200 million for another one of his stupid lawsuits that they have to settle. So Maricopa County is not in a good place right now because of stupid Republicans. And I wondered, this is something that I feel like we as activists had been sort of sounding the alarm on for, a month now. And part of me was always just like, where in the hell are the other Democrats? Why isn't anybody, throwing a fit about this? And now that we're starting to see the Republicans come out against it, it's like, oh, I get it. They were basically just giving them the rope to hang themselves. After watching this for a month, they have become a laughingstock. Everybody in the country is making fun of them. The fact that they're using cameras to look for bamboo in ballots that came from Asia. I mean, once you got to that point, everybody was just like, all right, no. And when CNN started interviewing some of the fools who were driving in there being like, well, I could count. Don't seem that hard to me. So I feel like, not to make fun of Rich's accent, but this is what's happening now, is that you have to rely on the Republicans to bring themselves down. And but I think the damage is already done. Like they are a laughingstock. The Republican Party of Arizona is a joke.
Rich, jump in there.
I got to jump in here on this. I mean, what is the latest excuse here? They're saying that chickens ate the ballots and then they incinerated the chickens to do away with the evidence. I mean, this is absolutely insane. These people are a laughing stock. And I will tell you that the Republican Party in Arizona should be the ones that get the bill for these voting machines. It shouldn't be off the backs of taxpayers. It shouldn't be off of anybody other than the Republican Party that come up with this cockamamie idea to do this garbage. I mean, this is a joke. It is, I mean, what a shame that we have people in this country, people in positions of authority in those areas that would allow this kind of garbage. But insane.
But here's the thing, guys. I mean, the reality is I'm talking to Republican voters every day, and they're all telling me, like, it was fixed. Everyone knows it was fixed. They've internalized that they believe that no matter what you say, no matter what I say, no matter what is presented in a court of law, they're never going to believe that Donald wasn't robbed. Robbed, I tell you.
The poorly educated.
No, but here's the thing.
Never vote again. They should never vote again.
There's the right answer. If it's just rigged, why bother?
Yeah.
Scott, jump in there.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, let them walk into their own propeller. When we were looking into this as to whether or not to get involved or publicize it or go against it really harshly, we could see the trajectory of things, and especially some of the things that people don't understand, maybe publicly, is that when you lie about something involving an election, that is in itself voter fraud. So if you're alleging voter fraud and it's not real, then you are committing voter fraud. So or election fraud. And so I can just say this: the DOJ warned them early on. They sent them a public letter that said, you could be in the commission of committing a crime right now, just FYI, and we're well aware of everything you're doing. You may be violating people's civil rights, and they alerted them to keep documentation and everything. I think right now, it's just a matter of time until this is investigated by Congress, investigated by the DOJ. People are going to go to prison for this. This is not a laughing matter. This is something that politicians take very seriously, and they've passed federal laws to protect everybody from this. And the only way that they can really make sure that they get new voting machines and they get new equipment and they get everything updated, because you can't trust these ever again. You don't know if they reprogram or what they did with them. But until they do that, the only way that they'll be able to do that is through people going to prison. There being court cases, investigations, and the truth coming out about that, because this is all sinister. The whole thing is kind of like, what can we do like right now to kind of slow things down or change the narrative? And they're like, well, we can have this kind of recount. And then they start to expand the lies, and it just becomes another big lie. It's like another tree growing in the big lie garden. And so it's this is a template for how other states are going to do things, but like on a smarter level, I would assume, where it's harder for them to get caught. This was too obvious, and I think they regret doing this. The smarter kind of Republicans would assume that this is a bad idea. But I'll tell you, this is not. They need to be made an example out of legally, and people need to go to prison. That's the only way you deter this from happening in other states.
Yeah, the big lie garden. I like that. The big lie garden. Because there's so many of them, but because, you know, you talk to everyone, they've got their own story. Well, you know, there was a guy who took a truck from Philadelphia, went to Bethpage, and went here and went there with empty ballots. He was driving around. Yeah, but did they?
Who was it, Rick? Who was it? Who was it? When did they drive there? What were they driving? What's the proof of that? Show me evidence. You have video of him driving? You have photo evidence of him driving?
But it doesn't even matter because the ballots were empty. They were blank.
Saki bomb is pushing back. That's what we got to do, though, is we can't let people spread these lies. But at the same time, if you engage with it, you give a spotlight. So that balance is nutty.
So what I'm asking you is where I'm going with this, and Rich, you can jump in on this too. At some point, the people who perpetrated these lies, I look at the state senator Doug Mastriano here in Pennsylvania, who held that Gettysburg Kangaroo Court, that super spreader event that had the phone call, and they just lied. Didn't bother taking any of that kangaroo court stuff into a court of law. Is there a way to hold those people who knowingly perpetrated the big lie accountable?
Well, you know, I tell you, you know, when we were listening to Rudy Giuliani and his crack team that he had, and they were basically on the news talking about all this theft and fraud and all that, you know, what people have to understand, especially the average citizens out here that are watching this, and a lot of them are the ones that are falling for this. You have to be able to explain to them that Rudy Giuliani went into court over 60 times. And he didn't get to go into court and claim all this fraud. And the reason why is because he had no proof, which is why they lost. It was like 59 losses and 1 victory that got him 200 votes. But at the end of the day, when it went into a court of law, he was not able to spew that stuff because the judge would shut him down in a heartbeat. And that's the way this is. So all these people screaming all this stuff, okay, fine. Then where's your proof? Then go ahead and take it to court. Because you can't just sit and scream that somebody drove a truck with a bunch of ballots. Go to court with it. Because if you don't have the evidence, the court's going to shut the door in your face.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Now, CBS News and YouGov had a poll this last week that showed 33% of Republicans believe Joe Biden is the legitimate winner of the 2020 presidential election. 67% of Republicans do not believe Biden is the legitimate winner. And when they also went to ask the question, what should Republicans do? What strategy? Only 53% said we should do messaging on policy and ideas, while 47% of Republicans said, nope, we got to go change the rules of voting. We got to suppress people's rights to vote. I see this as predictable because they don't have any ideas. They don't have any policy. But it's kind of scary when you've got 2/3 of Republican voters who have bought the big lie.
I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect because you have to look at the numbers on that. How many, you know, if it's like, what was it, 67%? First of all, that's 3 points down from where it was 2 months ago, which was at 70%. 67% of a party that is shrinking so quickly that you can't get elected from that. I mean, obviously look at Donald Trump, he lost, but if you've got 67% of your party and the entire Democratic Party and all of the independents who think that you're crazy, I mean, you can't win an election on that. And you can't win an election on voter fraud and voter suppression. And, you know, one of the things that they've talked about in Florida is that a lot of these voter suppression laws are going to hit Republicans really hard, which is what we talked about happening with the, you know, saying that the vote by mail was bad because Republicans had spent so many years trying to get Floridians to vote by mail. And so, I mean, this is all sort of, they're leading themselves, you know, they're throwing themselves into a well. they're throwing themselves off a cliff. They're doing like every possible thing that they can do to screw themselves up. And, if nobody thinks that they should talk about policy anymore, and the American people are like, I need, roads fixed, I need jobs, I need, and Biden is able to deliver these things. And I think Democrats are going to be good for the election.
Scott, last word.
I mean, I'd say that, there's going to be some people who never believe reality ever again. And that's something that, we'll have to just move past as a country, because I'm over dealing with this. There's people dying. We're dealing with real work. And let's focus on the real work.
There you go. Leave the fives alone. Let them go. Let those who are damaged move along. Let's take a quick break. Stick around. I got some stuff on the other side about the defendants in the insurrection. I want to get some thoughts on that. We're going to take a quick break. Right back with our all-star panel of Sarah Burris, Scott Dworkin, and Rich Ojeda. Right back after this. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day that Democratic President Harry S. Truman ordered the government seizure of the nation's bituminous coal mines. 800,000 United Mine Workers of America, led by John L. Lewis, had gone out on strike. A wave of strikes washed over the United States after World War II. As part of the war effort, most unions had agreed not to conduct work actions during the war. But as industry profits soared due to wartime government contracts, workers saw little improvements in their wages or working conditions. Pent-up worker frustration boiled over after the war. Historian Jeremy Breacher had noted that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics called the first half of 1946, quote, the most concentrated period of labor management strife in the country's history. The miners were part of that strife. They wanted improved wages, better health care benefits, and safety on the job. The strike had a ripple effect felt far beyond the coal fields. In early May, the Chicago Tribune warned, quote, the nation's worst coal strike tonight slowed the wheels of American industry toward a predictable full stoppage. Coal turned the wheels of industry, and the strike had drastically slowed mining. The government seized the mines and ordered the miners back to work. But still, the coal companies refused to meet the coal miners' demands. Unsatisfied with the resolution of the strike, the miners walked out again in November. The government fined the union $3.5 million, which it later reduced. President Truman called the work actions a rebellion against the government. But the determination of the miners forced the owners to agree to most of their demands. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So while I have been very kind of down over the fact that the Republican Party is so off their rocker, when only a third of Republican voters believe Joe Biden's the legitimate president, and 2/3 go, no, it was stolen. We don't believe it. And you have a Republican Party who votes for hate, who claims to love the police, but yet votes against funding them. It's crazy. They were under attack, and they don't want to know who led the attack because they know. While that's all depressing to me and all angering and sad and all that, the fun part of all it is watching these idiots who have been arrested or just the craziness. And again, one of my favorite ones this week was the guy who evidently thought it was a good idea while out on bail to go mountain lion hunting and then killed the mountain lion and took a picture with it. Again, showing himself breaking the law. while he wasn't even supposed to have a gun because he was convicted of armed robbery years ago. Very, very strange people. And here to share some thoughts on some of the wing nuttery, at least the funny stuff that's come out of this, our all-star panel of Scott Dworkin, Democratic Coalition, Sarah Burris, reporter at RawStory, and of course Rich Ojeda from No Dem Left Behind. Guys, I want to start off with some of the craziness that has come out this week, because I mean, these stories, you can't make these stories up. This guy with the mountain lion, did you not think someone was going to see your social media post? Let's start with you, Rich.
That's the problem, is that these people, they don't think at all. I mean, for a guy to be released on bail and told that one of the reasons, one of the stipulations is that you are nowhere near any firearms, and then the guy goes and does what he does and then posts it online. I mean, you've got to be a special kind of stupid. And, we know that some of the defense for these people are that, I mean, a lawyer actually said that these people are the ones who rode the short bus, and I don't want to throw stones at people that actually rode, on a short bus, but if that's your defense, wow. I mean, that right there it tells you where we are and where their mentality is, where their thought process is in trying to get some leniency from the court by basically saying that these people aren't that bright. That is hilarious.
So is it that they're not that bright, or is it just that they're privileged? They don't think the laws apply to them. They think they can do whatever they want and get away with it. Sarah, your thoughts?
I'm sure that accounts for some of it. But I think the reality is,
still stupid.
Rich is right. They're just really, really stupid, and they think that nobody's paying attention. And what's crazy is that after you're involved in an insurrection, everybody's paying attention. Everybody's searching your social media. The second your indictment is announced, people like me are jumping on your social media immediately. Sedition Tracker, this incredible website that is compiling all of this data. I love these guys. They're looking at every indictment. They're showing the photos from the FBI, from the FBI documents and the DOJ documents. There was the guy in Texas, right, who it wasn't just that he went to the insurrection. He then decided that he was so furious with the cops who shot what's her name, that he was going to try and find that cop and go after that cop. And then what did he say? It was something about, basically he was going to lynch him. And because the cop was black. So because of that, the judge refused to give the guy bail. It was like, the DOJ was like, this is really dangerous to put this guy out on bail, because God only knows what the idiot's what he's gonna do. And that's why a lot of these folks are still in jail today.
And they should be, because honestly, I mean, these are people, if you read their social media posts, and this is where I go back to how they were allowed to carry pipes and flag poles and the weapons that they had to the Capitol, how they were able to get there with that stuff is just beyond me. But Scott, your thoughts?
Some people thought that what was the word? Sacrificed babies and ate. I'll not go further than that, but it was like people believed this. Like reality checks it, and they're like, oh, that doesn't seem right. I think sometimes some of these, I guess one of the things that people complain to me about Trump is they're like, don't let him use the cop out of being stupid, because he's not stupid. He's just evil. And so like with this, they're trained to be evil. And so they're using this cop out to try and say that they're mentally incapable of deciding for themselves. I'd say in almost all those cases, that is not the truth. They may have been brainwashed. They may have been a member of a cult. They committed illegal acts, and they're still part of the Manson family. You see what I'm saying? So they still need to serve prison time. That's not an excuse that's going to fly with me, because there are people that are dead because of them. And I think coming back to the fact of, you can't have it both ways. Like, you have to either, I guess, feel bad about Ashley Babbitt and want to investigate her death, or not. And at that point, then what are you representing? I think a lot of these people in court, when like the court cases are going to happen more so end of this year and in the next year. And when that happens, reality is going to strike, because every day something's going to drip out that's new. And most of these people are not going to get the plea deals they're hoping for, because they're going to expect that entitlement. They'll be like, okay, we'll give you 10 years. And they're like, but that's not a plea deal. Well, you're looking at 30. Like, a lot of these people are facing the rest of their life in prison, as they should be,
Right.
because this is one of the things that we need to do to make sure that it never happens again, is have a deterrent, which is the fact that we have mandatory minimums with some of these crimes, and we have actual, sentencing guidelines that are very, very strict for a reason. They took pipes and they beat cops on their head. Some of them are dead. Some of them have injuries for the rest of their lives. They have families. They have kids. Like, some of them have grandkids. Like, these are people who fought in wars. These are veterans. Like, the reason why they weren't shot is because they had the restraint. They had the restraint and the training to not shoot them. Like, that's the only reason why. And they crossed the threshold. As a person who used to be a body man for politicians, I can say you cross the threshold. You do not want to do that, because they are trained to shoot to kill. And so you cross that threshold. You were then presenting no argument at that time. You're climbing over. What are you climbing in that hallway to do? You're going in there to kill somebody. That is the only way that you can paint it. These are terrorists. They need to be treated as such. And Marge Greene and all the other people like that are defending them, they're being abused and whatnot. No, they are not. They are being treated like the white people, overprivileged still. Hand-holding, excuse, no, enough. They need to face the consequences. They cannot use these excuses. All of a sudden, they're not capable of making choices, but they can choose to put on the headdress and the makeup, and they can do the perfect lines, and they can have some kind of strategy online, and they can have communications and write tweets and have marketing campaigns, but then they don't know where they're at. I got lost. I don't know how I led here. Like, give me a break. Give me a break. That's an excuse, and it's sad and pathetic. Talk your truth.
Yeah, there you go.
Tell people why you were there,
Yeah, no, look, if you broadcast your treason, own up to it. Stand up and own up to it. But I'll tell you, my favorite story of the week with one of these guys, they actually got away with it. Guy almost got away with it. Guy from Alden, New York. Evidently, he felt the need to bare his soul to his dentist. And someone overheard him showing video of himself committing his treason to his dentist, and they turned him in. That is one of my, outside of the woman who dumped her boyfriend and turned him in at the same time, this is my favorite story.
Now, Rick, you got to understand, though. Rick, you have to understand, Rick. Remember, there was one case where the FBI showed up at the guy's house, knocked on the door, and the guy opened the door wearing a "I was there" on January the 6th T-shirt. That right there, that takes the cake.
Yeah, the Bumble.
I like the Bumble one.
Yeah, the Bumble one was good. That the Bumble is a dating site where women make the first comment to the men, and it's just, I think he was talking back and forth, and I don't know, Sarah, you want to fill him in, but
he basically was bragging about himself to her and basically being like, "Oh yeah, no, I was there," and she was like, "I don't think we're a good match," and he's like, "I guess not."
Down to the FBI,
and then she called the FBI on him.
So not only did he not get the date, he got arrested.
Right, he didn't get any date.
He's getting a date, all right. It's coming soon.
Yeah, it's gonna be a dude named Sam, and he reads a lot of romance novels.
Not touching that one. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. I don't know if you saw, CNBC had a story this week that grabbed my attention. They were talking about this group. The name of the group is Research Committee, Consumers Research. They're evidently all upset about woke capitalism, which is now my new favorite line, because now there's woke capitalism because they're angry at Coke, American Airlines, and Nike for coming out and saying that people should have the right to vote. So what they're going to do is they're going to spend $1 million on ads going after those CEOs. And thanks to CNBC's story, they're going to do their ads on CNBC, which just seems kind of like I don't know, some kind of ethical journalistic line that you shouldn't cross? Sir, I want to start with you.
It is an ethical. It is an ethical line. The same thing I saw. There was a story on the Hill this week, and I can't stand the Hill because I know that they're conservative behind the editorial. But the Hill did had their morning thing sponsored by Facebook, right? It's that same kind of thing where you're reporting on things that, people are giving you money for, and that's not appropriate. It's not okay. I think that the thing about these kinds of things where they've decided that they're going to try and convert corporations, it's just not going to work. As somebody who used to work in the labor movement, you can do boycotts, and if you do them for long enough, they work. But everybody's got to be on board, and you've got to do it for a long time. And you've got to be working every piece and part of it, from politicians to corporations and everything.
Yeah, me personally,
I would say all of these Republicans, they need to boycott Apple and Coke and Walmart and Starbucks and whatever. They just should boycott everything. And they're not going to let you in without a mask anyway. So just don't leave your house anymore, please.
There you go. I'm all in favor of woke capitalism. I hope workers will get woke to the reality that they've been getting screwed out of wages for generations. They've had their pensions stolen, their health care diminished, their working conditions terrible. I'm hoping that people get woke real quick to how bad capitalism's been screwing them. I want to move along real quick because we only got a couple minutes left. The big story in my mind this week, Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen said this week that he actually believes Trump's going to flip on his own kids. Does Trump throw the kids under the bus? Let's start with you, Rich.
I absolutely believe that if it's to save his neck, he would literally throw, first off, Eric's going to go first. We know that.
Yes, he should.
Then it'll be Don Jr. And Ivanka will be the one that he will probably try to protect. But at the end of the day, he'll throw her under a bus too.
Sarah, thought?
I totally agree. And I think anybody who thinks that he won't throw Ivanka under the bus, including her, is in another world. They're dreaming.
I wouldn't expect him to throw his wife, daughter under the bus. Not his wife, my bad.
I think she'll go first.
As an actual slip up. But I would say Michael Cohen, he's right. I just don't know if people would be interested in what he has to say, because the roads lead back to him. And it's kind of like, I'm pretty sure that after being abused, especially Don Jr. Physically, is what I hear from Cohen, it's just not going to happen. I think this is the time where the kids turn on him, and they outnumber him, and they have a bigger social media reach, and they're actually stronger than him. So I think that this is when they try and silence him, this is the only way to go about it, and they throw him under the bus. That's how they save their company. That's how they save the Trump name, that if there's any way to do so. And that's, he's the virus right now, and they know it. And they're tired of sticking up for him. And I know that they're complaining about him. And I think that they're able to move past him. They need people like Laura Trump to run in North Carolina. They need Eric to run eventually, and the Don Jr. I don't know what he's going to run for. Ivanka will obviously run, but it's going to be really interesting to see. I just know that Michael Cohen does not talk like a pundit, and so when he says stuff like that, I would take it very seriously, because he knows he's talking directly to Donald. He's provoking the family at the same time. And he's not stretching the truth when he talks about that stuff. And so like that, he's very careful about what he says, because he knows he's going to get sued. He knows he's going to face a lot of legal exposure. But he's just over it. And I think it's a great mode to be in, because he's just going to be, truthful about these sort of stuff. So I do think that I think he'll get turned on himself. I think it'll be in reverse. I think the kids will turn on him.
Oh, that it's going to be fun to watch the intrigue, the fun that's going to happen there. Finally, evidently, according to our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, we are not buying Greenland.
I quit. I'm not. Yeah. That's too bad. I guess he cleared that up too. He cleared that up with Greenland. Greenland was really excited about that we're not going to buy them, that we're not in control of their future, and that they're desperate for money. Forget about it.
Another moment of just one of the last moments that we can look at the former president and kind of mock him a little bit in rears. Just how it is. But guys, I appreciate you taking time for me. I appreciate you sharing some thoughts. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story. Make sure you check out her work. Scott Dworkin of the Democratic Coalition. Check out the fabulous work they do. And of course, Rich Ojeda from No Dems Left Behind. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com is where you get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Love to hear your thoughts. You got any questions? Got any things you want us to cover in the future? By all means, email me, Rick at @thericksmith. Class heroes, this is of the week in review. All of the crazy stuff that has gone on over the past week, all of the nuttery, all of the insanity, all of the Matt Gaetz, the Trumps, just another week in America. And here to share some thoughts on the top stories of this week are all our panel of Sarah Burris, Rich Ojeda, Scott Dworkin. Guys, thanks for tuning in.
Hey, happy Friday.
So let's start with what an interesting week of House votes this has been. And even look, interesting corporate media takes. Let's start with the first one. On Tuesday, you had the representatives voting 364 to 62 on the Hate Crimes Act, the Asian American and Pacific Islanders. You had 62 Republicans in the House vote for hate, and one in the Senate, Josh Hawley, say, yep, we want to go hating on those Asians. Let's start with you, Scott. Thoughts?
I spoke with Senator Hirono about the bill, and she called, I think that she's sick of Hawley's antics, and she called him lame. Like, she was like, I'm over this. This is so lame of him. It's a lame excuse that it didn't cover the right aspects, and it just covered for a certain amount of people, like just excuse after excuse. So she kind of just was just like, what do you expect from someone like that? As to the excuse for the 62 Republicans who voted against it, I don't think that they know why they voted against it. They just voted against it. And it doesn't make any sense. It has no logic behind it besides they don't want to piss off the racist base. And that's all I see there. So I think it's a winning week for America in that respect, that, it's signed into law and we're good to go. I think that we have a lot of other things we need to take care of in regards to hate crimes, but this is a good start.
Yeah, I know my representative, Scott Perry, here in central Pennsylvania, he was on, again, the wrong side of history, and I'm hoping at some point someone takes him out electorally, that is, in the next election. Let's go to you, Rich. Speaking of taking people out, your thoughts on this?
I just think it's a bunch of cowards who are looking at this. Donald Trump, called it the China virus. He called it Kung flu. And of course, by doing that, eventually Fox News started running with it. It's hatred is what it is. And these people are too big of cowards to do what's right. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people in Washington, D.C. that absolutely should be doing the right thing, but won't because they're beholden to Donald Trump. And I really believe that a lot of them who voted against this was specifically doing that because, they refuse to accept the fact that Donald Trump made America hate again, and he spewed racist every time he opened his pie hole.
No, I mean, some people I had email me over the week were trying to make Josh Hawley out to be this profiles in courage. He was standing up against the mob and the cancel culture and all the woke, the mayors of Wokistan. I'm going, he's the only guy in the Senate.
The
Sarah, your
profiles in
thoughts?
bootlicking.
Exactly.
Bootlicking. Yeah, no, I agree with the guys, but I think that instead of it just being about voting for hate, I think that it doesn't matter what bill is put before Congress. I think they're going to vote against it if it's a Democratic bill. It could be a bill commemorating, Jesus Christ as our personal savior, and they would vote against it. It could be, naming apple pie the American, fruit pie, and they would just be like, oh, how dare you be against cherry pie? It would be, they would come up with a reason for literally everything. And it's just that it's coming from a Democrat. If we had any Asian Republicans, are there any Asian Republicans? I don't think there are there?
Not that I know of.
If they had any, presumably they would have been at the bill signing, because really the only people that were there, I saw in Politico complaining that the only people that were there were Democrats. And I was like, well, yeah, but they were all Asian. Like, the people that were there weren't there because they were Democrats. They were there because it was an anti-Asian hate bill, and those are the people that were present. Like, that doesn't make any sense that you would be like, oh, this isn't bipartisan. No, it was a very bipartisan bill. It's just that there are a bunch of Republicans who, it doesn't matter what you try to do, they're going to vote against it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I wanted to see the headline: 63 Republicans pro-hate. That's the one I wanted to see because, I'm looking at the headline of the vote for the funding for the Capitol Police, which, this is one of those interesting votes. But the headline screams, "Squad vote against Capitol Police funding makes Pelosi scramble." And I'm going, what happened?